irrelevant after a few years, right? So, case in point is PCI, that they have a few list of controls, and after a few years it's irrelevant because those controls are no longer, protecting us, like antivirus, for example, right? So my response to that is that there are two different kinds of, compliance frameworks. There is prescriptive and descriptive, right? So if you have a prescriptive framework that tells you, okay, I have a prescription, go do this and this, very specific measures, and you will be secure, like PCI, right? And there is the descriptive frameworks, like ISO 27001, like in the United States, information security, the federal FISMA.
FISMA. Mm-hmm.
Okay, which is, it's not a prescriptive, it's descriptive, similar to ISO. It tells you, okay, the things that are not going to change, things like manage your risks, know your assets, manage your incidents, those things are not likely to change, okay? For example, the CIIP law, which was mentioned, it's very high level. It tells you, okay, manage your information security program, manage your risks. There's a certain document which is dynamic, it's called ICS security standard, which changes. Okay, it can change even several times in a year, but you have to comply with that. Okay, so here you go. This is a very workable approach to manage it. I don't have to call the assembly to review the law. I don't have to, ask the Amir to sign and review the law. I simply mentioned a bylaw or subsidiary document that is going to be changing dynamically, but you have to comply with it. Okay, so you can manage what's prescriptive and what's descriptive, and I think many compliance frameworks are really successful in this. And as Claudio said, it depends on the organization and how well the implementation is, right? So many organizations implemented ISO 27001, and they implemented it very well, and others not so well. So it depends on the organization.
Good, thank you. Arne?
Thank you, Jim. And I'd like to thank you for the question as well. And I think that's where a board perspective and a senior management perspective might shed some light as to how we would address that. Because what we look at is the governance framework that you have in place to manage security. We fully understand and appreciate that things are going to change. We actually bet on it, that things are going to go against us all the time. So from our perspective, what we look at is, do you cybersecurity professionals have a framework, a governance framework, to draw you through that process to develop that protection? We do really believe that things will change in a way that we can't anticipate. Snowden was one of those individuals who showed that there was backdoor access to applications and hardware. So we want to take comfort in knowing that you have a process that is consistent, that you apply diligently, and that you will get an outcome. Sometimes it's going to be positive, sometimes it's going to be negative. So from our perspective, and maybe that's something that, when people talk about ISO 27000, that's really a framework. And in that you have your own practices that you put in place to meet those objectives of that standard. But really, how you decide to do that has got to be consistent. Because if it changes annually or biannually, you're going to have a pretty spotty record with respect to the performance you have on your cybersecurity endeavors. But if you have a consistent framework, I think you will help convince and assure the board and senior management that their faith in you is well placed.
Now, what's interesting is both of you pointed out that there are basic information security processes that we need to continually refresh as technology changes. In some cases, I think we're learning lessons and applying them, and in others we're not. The two examples that I'd point to, a couple minutes ago I briefed two major breaches The first one was the initial attack vector was through wireless attacks at a store level, at a retail level. And you know, I think the visibility that a number of those attacks got, a lot of the war driving activity, knock on wood, but we're not seeing a lot of wireless attack vectors right now. That could change, but people cleaned up. They started using encryption, they started securing their SSIDs, and it took a lot of that attack vector away. The one that bothers me is the destructive attacks that we've seen in the last couple of years that I don't think people are learning their lesson from. Saudi Aramco was the first big one. Then we saw the Dark Soul Shamoon attacks in Korea, and the same thing hit Sony a good year later. I think we really, as a community, need to start paying attention to destructive attacks. We're starting to see some malware out there in the wild that has a destructive module that doesn't appear to be the primary intent, but it looks like the hackers are giving themselves an option. Okay, other questions? Well, I'd like to, not seeing any, and that may be the lighting, but I'd like to just close on one topic that a couple of you mentioned and that I was somewhat surprised at, but I think is very, very important, and that was the mention of taking security culture home with us, to our families, to our schools, to our youth. I see that as being so critical to our entire ecosystem going forward, is bringing our kids up with security awareness and security concern. I'm really excited to see some of the competitions that are starting now at elementary, high school, and college levels, where the organizations put together teams to compete in the cybersecurity arena. Any perspectives in particular here in the Gulf?
Yeah.
Please.
I think I see ICT Qatar doing positive things in community outreach. Maybe they can brief us later in later sessions. They are doing very good initiatives to outreach to schools, students, and making people aware. And I think also having something at school level that, like, it would be a good thing. The curricula need to reflect this important aspect, because it's going to get only more and more important for us to have information security or IT security as part of our day-to-day life, because that's even sometimes our own life or our own survival depend on it. Like now we have medical devices, like we have someone from actually the medical industry, and we know that some medical devices are, they need to be managed securely, and so even our own life, depends on it. So I think that's very important. And not only that, even in universities, even in IT colleges, people don't teach security properly. Developers who are supposed to be building systems securely I can show you, you will be amazed. Even the examples in the curriculum have SQL injection in them. So, that's how bad it is, And I have to yet see any university implementing a program where they have actually not traditional security kind of thing, which is security software. I'm talking about software security. They are two completely different things, right? So or even information security in general, like how to build things securely, how to when we are architecting our information systems, we do failure modes, we do threat modeling, we do all of this. It's not part of the even postgraduate studies. It's not there. So we need to, maybe we have some research people. Mark can refer on this. So I think Mark agrees with me on this, and that the academia has to actually forget about schools, forget about elementary schools, even you know graduate, undergraduate, and postgraduate. They are not up to the task. So we need to obviously do something about it.
Well, we certainly share a concern there.
I can add one point only here. Yes, in especially in our national and GCC area, safety, there are a lot of importance they are giving to the school students and the educational institutions. Of course, just what could be this approach is very good. That let us identify even personnel, school, or any of the organization, the information assets, paper, people, software, equipment, electronic, whatever the services, identify that and give the necessary information to students, how to protect it, what are the pros and cons on this, how to secure it. If you are using your curriculum activities or any your mobile phones, for example, or any of this, what you are using these assets are, how much you secured on this. So give such type of informations to that level. Of course, that culture can develop and the students can get more secure information. I agree with you. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you. Oh, we have one more?
One last question or comment before we
Okay.
conclude the panel.
Thank you, gentlemen. My name is Mohammed Deljazar, and I'm with Qatar University, and I appreciate the gentleman's question. At Qatar University, there are some courses that are very technical on cyber, well, I should say hacking, or from a computer science program. This is very technical. But I was very surprised actually to see some information security sessions, high level compliance standards and things like that in the Masters of Accounting program, out of all places. I had no idea. I am aware of plans to address this issue, and this was initiated by ICT Qatar in communication with ICT Qatar. Actually, they approached the university, and we wanted to do this. I cannot speak for the university, but I know that there are plans to do something like this. The problem is that the demand, or we don't know if there is enough interest from the students. There's a lot of demand in the market, but the interest from the student side, that's going to affect it. The other thing that I'm aware of is that the community college here in Qatar, in Doha, is planning to have an information technology program and a separate track, I think, for information for IT security. So that should also should provide more blood into the community, the technical community in the future, hopefully. So there are some things that are happening. Not enough, but it's happening.
Good.
To know.
Thank you.
But again, you know, usually you see the focus is on, you know, the traditional security disciplines such as ethical hacking or network security or this, you know, cryptography. These are the traditional things. But what you really want to see that the software engineering course needs to have, you know, SDLC security built into it, you know, integrated into it. You need to see all of the operational and software development courses, you know, integrate these, you know, security, secure design and secure implementation concepts as part of because we get students who actually you know, universities churn out students who are actually taught to develop insecurity, you know. And I mentioned that now. The example actually in the course, the example has an SQL injection in it, okay, and other, you know, code injection vulnerabilities. So that's what worries me, and that's what actually has the potential to affect real change in the industry. Yeah, you churn it, you know, the mill actually is churning out students who have zero knowledge about how to build system. They know cryptography, they know hacking, they know all of these things, but they don't know how to build things securely.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're seeing such interest now in application security, because we see that being another vector over and over again. So thank you very much. I personally would like to thank the panel. Arne, Claudio, Abdul, Yasser, I think you've brought great perspective to this discussion, and I thank you. And I think we five do not want to be standing between you all and lunch. So it's probably that time.
I'd like to thank all the panelists again and Jim for this interesting and interactive moderation. There were two things that were quite evident from today's session. Number one is that I believe we all agree none of us are cyber secure. There was not one person who would say, oh yes, my company is fully secured, or I know I can secure it. And two is building the culture of cyber security, which I believe also starts at the very early age, because we have learned a lot of habits and it's difficult to unlearn. However, if it starts at an early age, and if that culture is imbibed onto them, I suppose they would be a lot better than what we are. So as a community, as an industry, we are able to protect collectively and proactively. So I'd like to thank all the speakers of today's session. Tomorrow we start at 9:50 with an opening remark. There's a panel discussion, some networking, and another panel discussion. Today's conference sessions ends with this panel discussion. Lunch is served at the Crossroads restaurant in level 3. If any of you would like to meet with the